Hello out there, I'm the oldest nerd here with a movie review. There was no storm. Well, there was a storm, but it didn't come anywhere near here. So it is relatively dry here. So we are here to talk to you about Battle Beyond the Stars. Now, this is a movie you may or may not have seen, but it is available for a free stream on Roku and probably various other of the free services. And it was done in 1980. It's a Roger Corman film. And if you know anything about movie making, Roger Corman made some very, very low budget pictures. And this is one of his first big science fiction things. It cost all of $2 million, most of which went to the actors. So you can tell that it's not going to be a very high end production. Nevertheless, they had a cast which was of some note, at least now. At the time, the biggest stars were George Peppard and Robert Vaughn. George Peppard, you may remember as Hannibal from the A-Team, Robert Vaughn from The Man from U.N.C.L.E., and various other things. Richard Thomas, who had just come off the Waltons at the time that this was being done, and John Saxon was the heavy in this, who was in a pilot for Gene Roddenberry called Planet Earth, which was a follow-up to a TV movie called Genesis 2. Anyway, there are some other people in here who were early in their career, like Sybil Danning. Marta Kristen from Lost in Space was here after she had made a run in Lost in Space. Julia Duffy, who was on Newhart. This was her first commercial film. Kathy Griffin, also probably very early in her career. She was uncredited on this. Now, there were some very interesting people that worked on this film too. John Sayles, who's written a number of things, wrote this, and I have to say that the writing could have been better, but we'll talk about that in a moment. James Horner did the music on it, and the music was really pretty good considering the overall production quality of the film. And it was enough that when Star Trek II was to be made, Nicholas Meyer heard the soundtrack to this film and immediately wanted to pick him up for music for Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Art director might be of interest to you. James Cameron, also very early in his career, and he went on, of course, to do Titanic and many other memorable films. And he was art director and also handled a lot of the special effects, which, considering once again they had almost no budget for it, he was paid $700 a week in order to do this. And they probably made this film in about a month. And Bill Paxton, who you may remember as, he played the president in Independence Day, and he's been in other things as well you might know of. He was so early in his career, he was one of the set carpenters. So with all of this, well, let's say something first of all about Roger Corman. He was one who would make cheap movies, but at the same time, he gave an opportunity to a lot of people that did not have experience to get that in real world movie making and having to deal with a real world budget, which never was very much. As we mentioned, George Peppard and Robert Vaughn got most of the $2 million it took to make this film. The rest of it had props that were taken from model kits. One of the ships is an old terrarium that was found in a dumpster, and you can see in some of the sets there are milk crates that make some of the textures of the inside. But they were able to do things with almost nothing. But this kind of real-world training brought us people like Francis Ford Coppola, Ron Howard, I think Spielberg and Lucas. They were all people who worked for Roger Corman at one time or other and learned a certain economy in how to make a film. Even after you have multi-million-dollar budgets, sometimes things come down to things that can be done very simply. Now, it kind of shows in this, although I have to say that the ships, for the most part, looked pretty good. Only one of them looked like it was made out of paper mache. The sets, less so. They were adequate, mostly. They reused a lot of electronic-looking equipment in various parts of the movie, but that worked out. Really, the only thing that didn't do well was the explosions. They weren't able to make that look very realistic. There was no computer graphics at the time, and so they had to do with what they could do. And it was not terribly convincing, but it was enough to make the story go. The film was probably about 90 minutes. It was probably about 45 minutes too long. Despite the fact that John Sayles became a rather good writer later on, this was not one of his best, considering that the dialogue was kind of pedantic. Some of the acting was wooden, but there was good performance out of George Peppard, who took the part just because he read the script and he thought it was funny, and decided to take on this space cowboy character he was playing. Richard Thomas did okay in the lead. He's a little bit wooden. Robert Vaughn looked like he phoned it in. Various other character actors that are in here, like Morgan Woodward, did a decent job. Sybil Danning was in here. The basic story was inspired by Seven Samurai. Later, Magnificent Seven did a treatment of that same film. And this does the same thing. They put 7 different people together that he's able to gather together, and they go and they do an epic fight. And that's essentially what this is, set in space. And as far as that goes, it works pretty well. If you stay off the planet surfaces and inside the ships, they did a pretty good job with that. The outside of the ships, many of them look like they were made from reused model kits and things like this of ships and planes mixed together. And I have to say that they held up pretty well. They were not so far away from the Star Wars looking ships, which this film was made about 3 years earlier. So there were some things that were borrowed from that. There were some things that were borrowed from Star Trek, no doubt, as well. But an interesting film, and made more interesting by the fact that so many talented people, so many people who would be very notable later on, were working on this film. And so I thought it might be interesting. It's kind of a fun film to watch because of the fact that it is, I wouldn't say that it's something that you'd really pay money to see, but if you can see it for free, it's a nice diversion, and it shows how far we have come. Even television shows look better than this now, and that is due to computer technology and the fact that they're willing to spend a whole lot more money. They spend more money on one episode of Strange New Worlds than they did on this entire production. And so with that, it is of interest to see what you could do in 1980 with no money, with some budding talent, and somebody that was willing to give them a chance like Roger Corman did. So I leave it to you. I recommend this, Battle Beyond the Stars. It is available on just about every free streaming service out there, so you should check it out. At least the first half hour or so, I think, would be entertaining. So I'd like to know what you think about it. Let me know if you've seen it before. There are several Roger Corman science fiction things, and they reuse a lot of those ships in later films. And there's one that I cannot remember the name of that had Ray Walston and Aaron Moran in, which wasn't half bad. And we'll see if we can find that and do that for you one day. Anyway, let me know what you think about that. Please don't forget to subscribe. We'll be back on Tuesday with yet another Babylon 5 episode. And until then, don't go far.